Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams as we always do. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. We'll also talk a little bit about college basketball. All that'll be part of our program today. NHL to New Orleans. Could that really happen? We'll mention that as well. Joining us on the program, one of my favorite guests, one of the best we have in the state. It is Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. Sean, welcome to the show.
Good to be back. It's the first time I've been here since kind of the new layout here, so good to be here. Good
to have you. And before we get started, I know it's kind of the off season for Fox 8, but you guys still have a lot of programming that people can enjoy. 10:35 on almost every weeknight. But again, set your DVR. You never miss the program like we ask you to do here. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, we pull back a little bit when it's not intense football season. So we do overtime on Tuesdays at 10:35, final bet on Thursdays at 10:35, and then Sundays we do the final play at 10:35. And then we still do our podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Andre Johnson Jr. and myself. You get that where you get your podcast, our YouTube channel, and of course the Gulf Coast Sports Entertainment Network. We have that there as well. And so we do our daily sportscasts and those shows, and then before you know it, the busy season will be here. I tell my wife every year, this offseason's been busy. Every offseason, she knows that there's no such thing as a quiet offseason because something always seems to happen. And look, it's been pretty intense since the Saints season ended. So we stay busy. That's what we do.
Your Super Bowl experience, and if you would compare and contrast it to what we saw in Miami.
Well, I loved it. Now, look, when I was in Miami, I was, in my mid-20s, enjoying the nightlife out there. But I and then obviously the Saints were playing there. But in Miami, we were driving back and forth and back and forth. It was not an easy get to. We had to cover the actual teams. At that point, I was actually covering the visiting team, the Colts. It was logistically very difficult to get around to and from. And then I don't even think I even got to Radio Row in Miami. There was so much going on. We had such a big staff there going on at Fox 8 when we went out there, obviously for the historic occasion. But there was an element of history being made, so that made it very exciting. And it was the Saints, so I loved it. I mean, we worked very, very. I told your mom Bush, I said we worked so hard, but we played hard too that week. It was one of those. I mean, you're gonna enjoy every bit of it. And then. But this one was a little bit different. Obviously, the Saints weren't in it, but we were covering it, and it's the first time since that 2012 season, 2013, since the Super Bowl week. And I remember 2013 was a great week. Everybody loved it, and then everything was going on smoothly, and all of a sudden, power outage happens, and hey, you got to live with it. But you wait 13 years, you get another one, and or 12 years to get another one, and here we are. And I thought it was about as close to a grand slam as you could possibly hit. I mean, when you look at the natural resources that New Orleans has, and it just became so prevalent to those that cover a lot of Super Bowls that hadn't been here in a while, almost kind of fresh in your memory a little bit. The natural resources of the proximity, of the walking distance, short Uber ride, whatever the case may be, on top of the restaurants, nightlife, fun, on top of what is obviously a Super Bowl. It's going to attract a lot of people, a lot of celebrities, and I thought it was just, I thought New Orleans knocked it out of the park. And I thought you add all those elements into what I think was the X factor, which was the local energy. The local energy that really picked up, that really understood it was go time, that really brought that natural, authentic energy that you can't fake. And that's why when I hear or I see certain things from some of these big time celebrities that really don't have nothing to do with sports, entertainers, whatever, they have a hard time describing how it was, how great of a time they had. It's because there's this energy that you can't fake. And I just felt like it was awesome. I wish the game would have been a little bit better, but in a way, even that was interesting because no one expected that to happen. So I thoroughly enjoyed myself. This is my first year on Radio Row. You know, in television, you know, we typically would probably just kind of walk around, grab some people walking around, get a quick 2-minute interview here and there. But I was like, I told my bosses this year, I said, no, we got a podcast now. I'm telling you, let's get a table down there and because it's a lot of action. And sure enough, we did at the last second, Saturday night before the Sunday when everybody started arriving. I got word that our table was ready for us. And sure enough, I mean, we got Jimmy Graham, we got Marcos Valdez-Scantling, we got Holden Mayo, the social media, the super fan of the Saints, social media superstar here in town. I mean, we got a ton, and we just had a blast doing it. And just being down there every day, you just felt that energy. And it was a very unique experience for me because I wasn't running around chasing things. I was kind of at the ground zero, so to speak, and sort of where all the action was happening. And I felt like our content was 10 times better than it would have been had we not had that. On top of the fact that we did stuff like the red carpet at the NFL honors. We did a couple of other events. The Tuesday night was the big party over at Mardi Gras World. We did that a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if you went this year, but it was packed this year. And then Fox 8, we're moving into our new building, a building you know very well. We're not in it yet, but we had a Fox 8 Super Bowl party, which our CEO knocked it out of the park. He spared no expense. It was incredible. So I'm probably projecting that, or you probably picked up now that I had a really good time Super Bowl week. I thought it was very busy. I was exhausted by Monday, but it was a good exhaustion because I felt like we got a lot accomplished.
And I think you make a great point. You and I have talked about it on the radio show as well. Again, New Orleans knows what to do. New Orleans, again, we do this well. There was some consternation over, again, 540 projects. We're trying to get that done within 6 months, which again was an arduous task for a city. That
they didn't all get done, did they?
No, it did not.
But it didn't seem to hinder
it. But it really did not. It, again, the thing to say was, again, we're 20 years past Katrina, right? And we're still working on stuff from Katrina. So again, that was a lot of nerves on that from that, but New Orleans does what New Orleans does, okay? We know how to put on a party. The people of this city understand. You mentioned on the radio show, New Orleans knew what they had to do, right?
Understood the assignment.
Understood the assignment. I thought that was a great line.
We understood the assignment.
Right?
This is like, it's our time to shine. Right. It's been a long time, but let's remind these people what New Orleans actually has to bring. And every New Orleans native, or even if you're not from here, but you live here, you understood, all right, this is our time. And I love that about our community because, look, a lot of things to be mad about with this community, or be frustrated with this community, or frustrated with the state of this city. But when it comes to stuff like that, it's our time to shine, and shine they did. I kind of felt like we went into Mardi Gras mode. I really did.
We did.
And we're the city built for that. And I felt like it rubbed off on our visitors who went back with nothing but great things to say about our city. And from what I understand, just kind of a little bit of the chatter around, because once the week's going and you feeling the vibes, it's okay, when we're going to get another one, because that run of new stadiums has kind of dried up a little bit. So now the regular rotation cities is starting to get back in. I'm starting to hear 2030, 2031. There's a realistic shot. Realistic shot at getting another Super Bowl, which I think would be fantastic.
And I do think, again, the era of getting a Super Bowl every 5 years is not going to happen.
No.
But I do think 7 to 8 years is very doable.
Yeah, and honestly, you don't want to. I don't know if I would want it every 4 years. I mean, you want the economic impact, but I think you want enough distance in between to where you can kind of reset, tweak. You don't want to flood it. I mean, what was it during the 70s? It was like 3 and a 9-year stretch. It was crazy.
And a lot of that had to do with the dome. Again, the dome was supposed to be opened in '74. It wasn't. That was that ended up that Super Bowl ended up at Tulane Stadium, and then the next possible Super Bowl opening, with the dome would have been open, so they moved it there. So we had 4 in the '70s. I mean, it was crazy.
A crazy run.
And that was the infant stages of the Super Bowl as well. And of course, the owners back then loved New Orleans. They had their meetings in New Orleans. They wanted their Super Bowl in New Orleans. And of course, now it's about, again, keeping up with the Joneses and really no pun intended in there, but in terms of stadiums, etc. So again, it is what it is. But I think we proved once again that, again, when it comes to putting on big events, there's no city like New Orleans.
Yeah, and there really isn't. And because we do it every year. And it's not just a big event. It's a week's worth of events.
Right.
It's not just one day.
Right.
And I mean, what is Mardi Gras? Mardi Gras is 2 weeks. And there are other cities that I happen to love around the NFL that I think are set up for similar types of like. One of the more underrated cities, just in terms of walkability, proximity, no one ever talks about, is Indianapolis. It's a fantastic city. I'd be curious if they get in the mix. It's a great stadium they have as well. Nashville, you know how Nashville's set up, Broadway Street, that could certainly be something.
Nashville copied New Orleans.
Yeah. So I do think there are other cities that have a comparable layout, but they don't have the experience that New Orleans does.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, like you mentioned, the people of this city understood, again, what it's time to put a game face on, and again, we did it, and we do it like no one else. All right, you know what? I'm gonna move things around a little bit today, okay? Because we talked a little bit about the Super Bowl. I want to ask you, before we get into the Saints, something that broke yesterday, which is, again, the possibility of an NHL team coming to New Orleans. Now, again, I laughed too, okay? And I did quite a bit on it on the radio show yesterday. There's a group that met with the deputy commissioner of the NHL with the governor's blessing, by the way. Okay, with the governor's blessing, by the way. And the governor came out today and tweeted out again. He believes Louisiana and New Orleans is ready for an NHL team. The possibility of, again, getting an NHL team. So again, at least the conversations are there. I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but I went into all the reasons on why this will not happen, okay? First of all, there are cities like Atlanta and Houston who, again, are building going to build NHL-ready arenas, okay? You've got Phoenix, who once had a team, again, who would like to get a team again, NHL-ready arenas. You've got some other northern cities, Cincinnati, Kansas City, etc., who have been trying to get NBA teams forever, and again, have arenas, okay? You have Canadian cities that, again, don't have an NHL franchise, which, again, have a ready-made fan base. That ultimately, again, you don't have to teach them about hockey. Again, they're ready to go. They're going to buy tickets as well. And then you have two things that, in my opinion, that are the real buttress in terms of stopping this city from being a 3 professional team city. First of all, the sports dollar. It is difficult to support the Pelicans and the Saints now for this city. There's lack of corporate support. Again, they're pretty much, the Saints and Pelicans dominate in terms of corporate support. And then the other part of it is, again, I believe that the Pelicans and Saints, who are trying to negotiate new deals for their leases, and maybe a possibility of either a new arena or again, a totally new, renovated arena for the NBA team, then I think it would be very, very difficult for that to happen. Number one. Number two, I think that, again, the ownership of the Pelicans and Saints, Mrs. Benson and that group would try to stand in and against it unless they were part of the NHL group to bring that team here. I love the fact that we're mentioned. I just don't think it's going to happen. I gave you all the reasons why. Sean, give me your thoughts. And do you think it's a possibility?
Well, look, I don't mind the press. I don't mind the idea of the city of New Orleans being a consideration for another major professional sports team. I don't mind that, even if it is a long shot. And that, let's be very honest, it is a long shot because you don't just have. It's not just bringing a professional sports team here. I mean, you have to educate this city, a very local city, on the sport of hockey. I mean, I can promise you the overwhelming majority, when I say overwhelming, 80, 90% do not understand hockey.
They never saw the brass.
They never saw the brass.
Right.
They don't understand the rules.
Right.
There is a lot of education that would have to be done. However, it happened in Phoenix. It happened in other cities. And I don't watch much NHL, but I do pay attention during the playoffs because it's the same time NBA playoffs, and they always talk about the energy and the excitement. I remember was it the Nashville team a couple years ago, just seeing how insane it was for their games. It's certainly a welcome thing in terms of, there is some excitement. However, what those cities have that New Orleans does not have, and all the things you said correctly, but the thing that they don't have the population. They just don't have the population.
Right.
People don't understand just how big of a deal that is when you just have one city with 1 million people, whatever, I don't even know what the estimate is, just the greater metro area, and another city with 7 million people, just how much of a difference that makes. I remember doing a little study once, just kind of doing when the LHSAA sent out their enrollment figures for certain schools, and I just looked at the highest enrolled schools, and there were, I don't know how many they were, but there were 20, 25 over a population, over enrollment of say 2,000 students. And I went to Texas and I looked at how many schools have enrollment over 2,000. It was like 20 times the amount of schools. I mean, when you really just start to add up the amount of households and families and kids and you just expand those numbers out, just how much those other cities just have a numerical advantage. I think that's certainly why. Now, I think that caught everybody here off guard.
Oh, absolutely.
I love that New Orleans is trying to play big. I love that the governor is trying to play big, but it's a long way from considering or maybe perhaps expanding or talking about the city of New Orleans before that actually ends up happening, where a professional hockey team actually ends up here in the city of New Orleans. As we sit here today, what day is today? February 19th, 20th, something like that. I'm going to say I do not believe that happens, but hey, I'm pulling for you. I'm pulling for it to happen, but I don't think that's going to happen.
February 20th.
Okay.
Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, came out and said it's a substandard arena. He said it without saying it. There needs to be upgrades to the arena. We know there's going to be negotiations on, again, as I mentioned, whether, again, you're going to implode the arena, build on that site, allow the Pelicans to play in the Dome for a couple seasons like the Jazz did, or, again, possibly, move the arena to another part of the city, which I think would be ridiculous because of that McKithen complex. Again, it's perfect. You have everything in one spot. It makes no sense to be able to do that. 41 dates for an NHL team. 82-game season, just like the NBA. So you're also in a position now where, again, you're splitting. You're trying to split a building now between two tenants, two major tenants that are professional sports teams, and trying to work around that. With, again, the Pelicans having the leg up because they're the major tenant, right? It is a nice thought. I brought my kids to see the brass. I enjoyed it. I watched the hockey playoffs. I watched the Stanley Cup. But I just don't think it's in the cards for New Orleans because of the sports dollar, because of the population, because of the lack of corporate support, and because the arena, which was built in 1999 as a bare bones arena, even though there have been upgrades, it's not going to be the standard they're looking for in the NHL, especially when you look at other cities that want to build a brand new arena.
Yeah, and look, I don't know anything about hockey in terms of infrastructure and maintenance, but it seems to me like maintaining a hockey arena is a lot different than a basketball arena. You got ice down, you got to freeze things, you got to bring the Zamboni. I mean, there are a lot of things.
A lot of times they're putting the court on top of the ice.
Right. I mean, you're talking about a lot of different things that, look, it's a great thought. Right. And like I said before, I love the idea of New Orleans wanting to play big. I would love to see, because I think Major League Baseball, I don't know if it could work here, but I think there would be a bigger interest here perhaps. So I love the fact that New Orleans is trying to play big, or at least in the other entities are thinking about New Orleans. Who knows? Maybe Super Bowl rubbed off on people. Who knows? But just in terms of New Orleans being a destination city, but as we stand here right now, I just think it's a long shot.
New Orleans, I don't want to say we were at our apex, but again, back in the 70s when before the oil bust, again, the Toronto Blue Jays were supposed to be, again, an expansion team that was supposed to be destined for New Orleans. It ended up in Canada. It never happened. Again, the Dome was built as a multi-purpose facility to be able to have a baseball team. One of the reasons why the press box, and the original press box was so low is because it was a baseball press box. Okay, once again, they went with the changes we've seen in the Dome now. All that went to the wayside. Look, I think there's a better shot down the line of an MLS team.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, I could see that.
Especially with the influx of, again, so many people that again of Spanish or Latino descent that are living in New Orleans now. MLS is hot. Okay, especially with the younger generation, than maybe an NHL team. But again, once again, that means putting money into infrastructure and building buildings. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we were in sports. The more sports, the better. We got bigger fish to fry in this city right now in terms of getting our infrastructure together than trying to build a brand new stadium for MLS. Or again, look, we're going to have to figure out what we have to do with the arena. That has to be for job one after the Dome. But again, that has to be the priority in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. You talk about out of left field. I did not see that coming.
Well, the fact that the governor's all on board.
Yeah, so clearly there have been some discussions. Right. They did a pretty good job keeping that under wraps.
Right.
And
look, would governors want in this state? Governors get.
Yeah. No, so the fact that he's in is certainly a huge in terms of momentum. Just because you kind of create your momentum with the highest ranking official in the state talking about it. But
no doubt.
It's one thing to talk about it. It's a long way from actually happening.
To deliver, right. Especially as I mentioned, with all these other cities, as you mentioned, with all that population, and then the Canadian cities who again have a ready-made fan base. It's a Powerball long shot at best. All right, we'll take a break here. We'll hear from our underwriters. We come back, we'll jump into the Saints. A lot of news on the New Orleans Saints in terms of, again, their brand new coach and the coaching staff that's being put together. We'll get into also, again, LSU, Tulane, and on the football side, there's a brand new building being built for Tulane. We'll get into that. And then, of course, we'll touch on college basketball as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is my guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
I could just hear the audience screaming at the TV. Sean Fazende is here. Why are you not talking Saints? Here we go. We're talking Saints.
Let's talk Saints. Let's do that.
All right. First of all, your impression of Kellen Moore.
Look, I liked him. I thought he came across well. I thought there were no real hiccups in the press conference. I thought he got the points he wanted to get across. He was clear, concise, confident, pretty calm. He didn't say too much, didn't say too little. It wasn't like he was a mute, but he wasn't like he was out there filibustering, saying stuff that really didn't make any sense, didn't make any grand statements or grandiose sort of moments in the press conference. I thought he passed. It's not about winning a press conference. It's about winning games.
Yes, it is.
Nick Sirianni blew up his opening press conference. It was horrible. I remember that press conference, and look where he's at. He's been in 2 Super Bowls the last 3 years, won 1. So I've been to many opening press conferences where I thought that guy was fantastic and they didn't win a game. So I thought it was right down the middle. I thought it was right about what I expected and what I heard from Kellen Moore. I get a little sneak peek into his personality, because I know the word presence has been thrown out there.
Yes, absolutely.
And he was right where I thought he was going to be. He's not, I say this because I don't mean it as a disrespectful way. I mean it in they're just different personalities. It's not Carmichael or Kubiak, who are really low key, really monotone. I feel like he's got a little bit more than that, a little bit more presence to him than that. But he's not. The biggest thing, Eric, is he cannot be somebody he is not. And
I would agree.
What I felt like is he's pretty comfortable in his own skin.
Look, I think that's the first thing, right? I mean, again, people see through phoniness, and you can't be someone you're not. Now, again, you mentioned it on your programs. We talked about on the radio show. Was an incredible quarterback at Boise. You have to be able to command a room as you're as a quarterback, a leader, a natural leader. You have to be that. As an offensive coordinator, you have to be a leader. The question is, again, can you command the entire locker room as a head coach? And I guess we're going to find out very quickly. Look, I've always said this, and again, I think it's by design. Okay. Again, I don't think Mickey Loomis wants these big personalities involved in Saints or Pelicans anymore. You look at David Griffin; he's not a big personality. You look at again Willie Green; he's not a big personality. You look at Dennis Allen; not a big personality. Okay. Again, totally opposite of what we saw with Sean Payton in terms of a guy that could come in and take over not just the room but the entire organization. And again, Kellen Moore's along those lines. So, and Mickey Loomis is that type of guy. So maybe he's trying to find guys that again maybe in his mold. That are not these guys that are just come in and just boom, it's me and I'm taking things over. With that said, as a first-time head coach, we know now that Doug Nussmeier is going to be the offensive coordinator, but he will not be calling the plays. I had an issue with Dennis Allen calling the defensive plays, even though he was a great defensive coordinator as a first-time head coach. We've seen other head coaches pull it off. Sean Payton pulled it off. We've seen obviously again McVay pull it off. What are your thoughts about, again, him being the play caller as a first-time head coach, and does he need a strong assistant head coach to help him with the everyday?
Well, he absolutely needs that, regardless if he calls plays or not. He's a first-time head coach. He needs a strong assistant head coach that's going to help kind of keep everything in line, help with the day-to-day, understand the magnitude. When I talk to a lot of these guys, not just in football, but just in general, when they go from an assistant to a head coach,
yes.
The biggest thing that overwhelms them is just the enormity of the schedule. It just expands to a point where it's something that you're just not necessarily used to. You can't get you ready for that. It's just you don't have that title. You're just not going to be able to have it. You're not going to have those responsibilities until you have those responsibilities. So he's going to have that regardless. But no, I have no problem with him calling plays. That's happening all around the NFL. In fact, it was a rarity that an offensive-minded guy like Nick Sirianni allowed Kellen Moore to call plays. You look at the Buffalo Bills, McDermott calls defensive plays. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid calls offensive plays. You look at, just about everyone, when you really think about it, they allow whatever side of the ball they come from, usually that head coach calls plays. I know in Dallas, McCarthy allowed Kellen Moore to call plays, then took it back, then gave it back. There was a little bit of a back and forth.
But McCarthy was always a guy that called plays too. He's a former offensive coordinator.
So there was a little bit of give and take when it came to that. Usually it's hard for those guys because that is going to be the easiest thing for Kellen Moore is calling offensive plays on game day.
I agree.
Okay, that is what they know, and that is what got them the job. More than anything else, that's what gets them the head coaching title. And usually those guys will relinquish those duties if they feel more and more confident in their staff at some point. Maybe a couple years, may not ever happen. I know it was back and forth. You mentioned the former Saints head coach and Sean Payton. It was back and forth between he and Pete Carmichael over the years. So it is what it is. I have no problem with Kellen Moore wanting to call plays because other than a couple of guys, I don't know who doesn't call one side of the plays now anymore in the NFL.
Okay, let's talk about Doug Nussmeier, the new offensive coordinator, of course, ties to the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, his, again, son, the starting quarterback for the LSU Tigers. He married a Louisiana girl. Again, they call Lafayette home. That's their home base. Your thoughts on him coming in, and again, understanding again that he's coming from a quarterback coach to an offensive coordinator, and a guy that's pretty much followed Kellen Moore throughout his career.
And it's interesting because he's been coaching way longer than Kellen Moore. He's significantly older than Kellen Moore. He's like 18 years older than Kellen Moore. So for a guy of that age, I think he's old, but it's just a guy of that. He's way more experienced to be that loyal to a guy that at one point. Look. I'm sure he watched Kellen Moore play and the assistant and become a backup quarterback in the NFL. So clearly there's a connection, there's a chemistry there for him to follow, for those two to be tied at the hip like that, and for basically Nussmeier to be under Kellen Moore in these stops in the NFL. Because, he was calling plays at Florida. He was calling plays at the University of Alabama. This guy's got a resume now. So it's not like this is a guy that's never done anything. He's done a lot. Obviously, he was drafted here in 1994. I remember the lefty. A lot of left-handed quarterbacks on the staff right now. You talk about him and Kellen Moore. It is a promotion for him to come to the Saints when he was previously the quarterback's coach. He's probably going to be heavily involved in offensive meetings.
I would agree.
Probably going to be heavily involved in passing game, game planning. May not be calling the plays, but probably have a big say in what plays get thrown in the game plan.
Probably in the booth, give his Kellen Moore's eyes, right?
Probably so. I think Kellen Moore bringing Doug Nussmeier aboard. First off, it was expected.
Yes.
To be given the track record, but also I think we have that kind of experience. He's got a very unique resume as well. When you look at Nussmeier's resume, college pro, former backup quarterback. So I think it's a guy that he clearly trusts. And look, man, it's your first time being a head coach. You got to go with people you know, people you trust. And I think he trusts and has certainly a comfort level with Doug Nussmeier.
And there's a theme of that. And I'm glad you brought that up, trust. Because, again, Chase Haslett, son of, again, former New Orleans Saints head coach Jim Haslett, is the tight ends coach, someone he's very familiar with at Dallas, right? Brendan Nugent comes back as the offensive line coach here with New Orleans. Moore is also retaining Keith Williams as his wide receivers coach. He goes out and gets former NFL quarterback Scott Tolzien to be his quarterback coach. Joel Thomas comes back as the running back coach. TJ Paganetti is going to be on the staff. Unknown what his duties would be, but he was the assistant offensive line coach and run game coordinator with the Eagles under Moore. And then Phil Galliano is the special teams coordinator. Ted Rath comes in as the sports science director. And we're waiting now on, again, the announcement of Brandon Staley as the defensive coordinator, and all things point to that. So we got a little glimpse into the staff. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's a good mix of young and old. It's a good mix of veteran and youth. Nussmeier's 54, Joel Thomas is 50. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Nussmeier and Joel Thomas overlapped as players at the University of Idaho.
Okay.
I think Joel was a freshman when Nussmeier was a senior at the University of Idaho. Joel Thomas has developed some really good running backs over the years. Some of Mark Ingram's best years under Joel. Obviously, Alvin Kamara.
Yes.
He's a guy that I know his family's going to be ecstatic about coming back to New Orleans. They loved New Orleans, where they were living, and just very involved. Just, he had young kids. He's involved in everything, sports and all those types of things. So I have a feeling he's going to love being back here in New Orleans. The guy I'm really curious about, I remember Nugent when he was here. So that's obviously that's a connection. But what I'm really interested in is this new sports science guy. Is this new sports I guess is that their definition of strength and conditioning coach? It certainly feels like. Okay. Because I'm ready to see something different. I'm really just ready to see something different.
You mean the soft tissue industry is going away?
Injuries, whatever. Maybe there's a different way of doing things. I'm ready to see a different practice schedule. I'm ready to see a different press conference schedule. I'm ready to see a different format to practice when we were out there to go see it. I'm ready to try to see just a different way of looking at things. But the guy, with when you're coming off a rash of injuries the Saints have obviously had, your strength and conditioning, your director of sports science, whatever label they want to call it now, becomes a very important part of the process. So I know they want to take a deep look at it. So clearly this guy is someone they respect. So I'm very curious to see how the play, and you don't really know until they're staying healthy or getting injured. But I think all in all, it's the offensive side of the ball, and I think that's obviously where Kellen lives. So he'll get his DC eventually, and I'm curious if that DC then will have his say in who he wants as his assistants.
And then what type of system will they play? Because you and I have talked about this on the radio, okay? 3-4 is what Staley likes to play. The Saints' defense right now is not set up to be a 3-4 defense. So they're going to have to be a turnover on that roster. And a turnover on the roster when you don't have a lot of cap room. The salary cap, again, is going up somewhere between $277.5 million to $281.5 million. That's a $22.1 to $26.1 million increase. You put it out yesterday on social media. The Saints could now be about 47 instead of 54 million over the cap. So there's the issue of turning over your roster to be able to fit what your defensive coordinator wants to run. And then there's the other two big ones that are out there. What do you do with Derek Carr? What do you do with Taysom Hill? I'll throw it to you.
Where do you want to start?
I mean, again, some people want to say trade him. Some people want to say cut him. Some people want
to start with Derek Carr? Let's start with Derek Carr. Well, look, we did a whole podcast on this last night because we've really crunched numbers. We have looked at it. There is a way to move on from Derek Carr if you wanted to via cut, release, whatever, either pre-June 1st or post-June 1st. Pre-June 1st, you take all the dead money right away. You get your $1.2 million in cap savings. Post-June 1st, you break it up over 2 years, but you don't get that money until June 1st, so you still got to go
it's about $30 million?
$30 million after June 1st.
After June 1st, right.
So you can do that, but we crunched some numbers yesterday on our podcast. You can do that, but if you do that, I estimated, I think this is a ballpark figure, I'm not down to the decimal point, but I've got years of covering the salary cap with the Saints. So the math that I know that they've used in the past, I estimated if you cut Derek Carr, that requires 16 other moves to get done, to get salary cap compliant, not far enough to get salary cap space to go sign
That's
guys.
just to get
just
zero.
To get to zero. That includes 7 cuts. 4 of those cuts I think would be probably going to get cut regardless. But there are other names like JT Gray and Foster Moreau that I think most would probably like to keep if you could. You could survive without them, but you'd like to keep if you could. And then 9 restructures, 3 of those would be restructures of guys over the age of 30, which is what you do not want to do. And that's not even counting if you have to cut Taysom or cut Cam Jordan post June 1st, which is possibly what they could potentially be doing. So to me, 16 moves to absorb the Derek Carr blow. If you really want to get rid of him, you can do that. Or, which I feel like is the most fiscally responsible thing to do and just a prudent thing to do based off what you have, you can keep and restructure Derek Carr because no one else gives you that type of salary cap relief, than Derek Carr. You can get it all the way down to 25 million if you want. You can kind of get it to where it's 22 million in cap space, which would go from 47 to 22, or 27 minus 22 put you at what? I don't know, 25 million over. And with that, you would have to do just 9 moves and it would only be 4 cuts and 5 restructures, and Derek Carr would only be the one over the age of 30 you would be restructuring. And then at that point you could cut more, restructure more as you need more cap space. That gets you back to zero. So cut Derek Carr and 16 other moves, keep Derek Carr and 9 other moves and get salary cap compliant. It really depends on where you're at, how you truly view 2025, and if you really just want to move on from him now, or do you just kind of look at it longer and say, we're going to get rid of him eventually, but we just got to hang on to him for 1 more year because of how bad our salary cap situation is. And I am quite sure they've had those discussions.
Exactly where I was going to go.
I am quite sure they had those discussions. And, he kept it down the middle in the press conference, which, leads me to believe, I don't know if cutting him is one of the options. It might be, are they quietly trying to pick up the phone and see if anyone will be willing to trade for him, which is the hardest to execute, but that kind of splits the difference.
That gives you about 11 million,
11, so you go from 23 or 1, and 11 gives you right down the middle. And then you get some compensation to return. Is that a possibility? I think that's certainly something that they would certainly welcome, but that's the hardest to pull off. So if it were me, back to your original question, what I would do, I don't think the Saints have a choice. I think you got to keep them and restructure them.
And I agree with you. And I think that Kellen Moore knew that coming in. And I think that was probably one of the conversations they had. Look, whether you like Derek Carr or not, we're kind of stuck with him this year. Okay, we'll draft a quarterback. We'll move in another direction. We'll get the quarterback that you're looking for. But again, because of cap constraints, we probably have to keep him this year. The other guy's Taysom Hill. And there's so much rumors about Taysom Hill getting cut, 35 years old, coming off an ACL injury, and then again moving on to Denver and being with Sean Payton. When you look at it, $18.2 million against the cap, $10 million base salary. Again, his dead cap is $17.7 million. I mean, you save about $1 million if you cut him.
Well, that's why you wouldn't do it unless it was post June 1st. You'd only post June 1st. Taysom Hill, and probably the same thing when it comes to Cam Jordan.
That's the same thing. About $1 million, all you save.
That's it. I don't know. One of those two guys or both is going to be asked to take a pay cut, and if one of them refuses, the one that refuses, or whoever they ask, and if that person refuses, that will probably say, okay, we're going to release you post June 1st. I still believe an offensive mind, a creative offensive mind, an adaptable offensive mind is going to look at Taysom Hill and see value.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think Kellen Moore is going to view Taysom Hill as an asset. Can you work with maybe an adjustable contract? I don't know. Do you just say, you know what, we'll got 1 more year with him, we'll just play it as is?
Play it out.
I mean, the guy's given a lot to these organizations, done a lot in terms of snaps and what he's done. versatility standpoint. I still go back to last year and how much it's like Clint Kubiak walked in a room of 500 people and his eyes went right on Taysom Hill. And you could just tell he was an offensive coordinator without Taysom Hill, offensive coordinator with Taysom Hill. That was it. I mean, how much he latched on to Taysom Hill's skill set. And I could see Kellen Moore being the same way. So I don't know which way Taysom Hill goes because I don't think it's going to be a direct cut. I think it would have to be a post-June 1st cut. You only get 2 of those, remember. But I just had this inkling or this sort of this feeling that a young offensive mind is going to view Taysom Hill kind of as the ultimate chess piece, the ultimate versatile guy, and probably try to keep him around. Now, in Taysom's case, I think the perception of his injury issue is a lot bigger than his actual reality. If you really go back and watch how many games he's actually missed, this year was, I believe, the most at 5 that he's missed in a season. Before that, I think it's only been 3 or 4 that he's missed over the entirety of his career. So I'm leaning more towards Taysom Hill staying, but I understand why that would be out there because he is 35, he is coming off an injury, and he does have a high cap number.
All right. One more thing on the Saints, and I want to shift gears here. To me, you stay with Carr, you build up the offensive line, you build up the defensive line in the draft, and because those 2 things to me are the most pressing. You have to get better on the offensive and defensive line. If you switched again to a 3-4, you've got to get run stuffing defensive tackles. So I think that has to be the priority more than maybe looking for that quarterback or hunting for that quarterback in the draft.
Well, I'm gonna say neither because
you want a playmaker.
I want a playmaker.
Right.
Look, they've invested so much up front, and if you really look at the offensive line, if you're okay with where Penning's at, and if you're okay where Ruiz is at, if McCoy stays healthy, and Taliese Fuaga, I think you can find a left guard, either a veteran free agent, low kind of 1-year deal type thing, or you could probably find a guy, especially given where they pick the top half of all the rounds that they're in. You could probably find a 3rd or 4th round guy that can be serviceable at that left guard spot. I want a playmaker. I want a dynamic playmaker because even the Saints at full strength last year, even when they were winning those games the first 2 weeks of the season, I still felt like they were short a playmaker. They're really short playmakers now.
Right.
So to me, I want an offensive playmaker, an offensive weapon. OW, that's what I want, that 9th overall selection. I think this is the draft where they possibly could add a dynamic piece like that.
Let's shift gears now, and I want to ask you first of all about the big news on the Tulane campus. Finally, the building of again the bubble, the practice facility. Your thoughts?
Love it. I mean, that was such an integral piece to the infrastructure that was lacking for the Tulane Green Wave.
Right.
I mean, let's give credit where it's due. I mean, they've come a long way. I mean, the really the bullish effort to get Yeoman Stadium built to now the indoor practice facility, which is it's as important as anything else when you talk about what Tulane certainly needs from an infrastructure standpoint, to have that ability on campus to go there, inclement weather, whatever the case may be. I certainly think that's huge, and it allows them to sort of play big, so to speak. And a campus that's pretty landlocked. They've been able to find the room. Certainly been able to find the monies to get it done. And it's just a matter of priority. And it really signals that shift into priorities for the university. They're playing big when it comes to NIL, even though they lost quite a bit this past year to the transfer portal. And I hope this is the start of, if you're going to play big, let's play big. I hope this is the start, if to get a little run of success here, where it's not just, all right, Tulane winning AAC championships and that sort of thing. Maybe Tulane gets in the mix of one of these bigger conferences coming up fairly soon. If there's a window
they
for
say
that,
the Pac-12's coming back.
Look, if there's a window for something like that, I say absolutely play big to try to get back into that, because that's really where the game changes for a school like Tulane.
Sean, it's going to happen. The Pac-12 is going to come back to the AAC, and they're going to try to go after Memphis and Tulane once again. They got to get their TV stuff kind of squared up. You look at the ACC. If they lose some of their big teams to, again, a mega conference with the Big Ten and the SEC, which looks like that's the direction they're going in college football, Tulane could definitely be a candidate for the ACC as well. So again, look, it's not the Taj Mahal, but it's needed and necessary in terms of a practice facility, to be able to hold on to guys like Summerall. And also, again, look, I know it's about NIL money, but again, players don't want. Look at the lost time that you have busing these kids back and forth to the New Orleans Saints practice facility, school. Tulane's a difficult education and diploma to get no matter what. So again, it was needed and necessary. On another note, let me just go through this quickly in terms of basketball. Tulane is 15-11. They're 9-4 on the men's side, and again, a real good shot at the top 4 in the American Athletic Conference, which gives them the double bye. Same thing for the women. They're, even though they lost last night, again, they're within striking distance of that. Tulane men, again, not doing well this year, 4-23, 2-14 on the season. The SLU women out incredible, 22-3, 16-0 in the Southland. They've been incredible, absolutely incredible. And I got to give a shout out to Xavier women as well. 26-2 in their regular season. They're getting ready to go into their conference tournament, and they've been outstanding. LSU's having a really tough season, 14-12. 3-10 in the SEC. It really looked like, again, they were going to be really good at the beginning of the season. They lost Reed, their center. But the good news for LSU is a commitment now in terms of NIL for the basketball program. They've got about $2 million at NIL right now, which is what South Carolina's bringing in every year. Both those teams are at the bottom of the SEC, and now it looks like a renewed commitment in terms of NIL money for the men's basketball program.
Just look at the SEC right now. Look at the top teams in the country right now. They're all in the SEC. Didn't Missouri just beat, Alabama last night or 2 nights ago? So you talk about a forgotten sport on LSU's campus. I mean, I remember when I was a student there. I mean, it was at the Deaf Dome. It was, John Brady. It was Stromile Swift. It was Brian. I mean, it was.
And I go back to the Dale Brown era.
And then they had, the Final Four run with Darryl Mitchell and those guys. That was a formidable men's. I mean, it was men's basketball season.
LSU was a basketball school.
And at that point, women's were still doing really good. So you talk about a forgotten program, a program that's kind of slipped into mediocrity or even below that right now. So So it was an acknowledgement by Woodward that, hey, maybe I haven't given my my current head coach enough of an opportunity to succeed. Maybe a little bit of a acknowledgement from the current head coach that maybe I got to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the transfer portal, and maybe less D&D guys, draft and develop guys, maybe more guys that are a little more ready-made to play, that have a little more of a top-end talent as opposed to trying to develop a 3-star into a quality college basketball player. Although I admire that as well, but you can't have all that on your team. So sounds like everybody's getting a little bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card, a little bit of a break. All right, we're going to start fresh, start right here. Because I thought for sure McMahon would have been out the door after this year just because the rest of the SEC is passing him by. And I know Woodward does not like being last place when it comes to anything. He plays too big for something like that. So we'll see if that sort of bears out of the, if they're able to, because if you're LSU men's basketball, it's not like women's basketball. You're not going to be a Final Four team every year. Everyone understands that, but you've got to be a consistent tournament team. And it's been a long time since you've been a tournament team.
And Sean, it's also about retention as well. When you get quality players into your program and you start to develop them, you don't want to be a feeder school for other teams in the SEC or again other conferences. So that's part of it as well. You got to have money to hold on to your players, not again just going out to get them, but hold on them as well. LSU women, 7th in the nation. They're 25-2, 10-2. They got Georgia tonight. Final Four team?
Yes, I mean they can be. I think they're in a guaranteed Elite 8 team right now. I like the roster. How deep is Kim's rotation going to be? Is it going to be 8 when they get into the NC2A? Is it going to be 7? Because I think that caught them a little bit last year. I thought they got a little lackadaisical in that Texas game. I thought they had the lead. I thought they got a little big-headed towards the end there. And Texas came back. Which why would you be that against Texas? I have no idea because given where they were ranked. So Kim Mulkey, though, is a good enough coach to take a loss like that and really use it to refocus her team. Because sometimes that can happen with LSU women's basketball. Just giving a lot of glitz, a lot of glamour with that program. But sometimes you got to get back down to earth a little bit and realize why you're there. And look, they've had a great season. There's no doubt about that. 25-2 is 25-2. Right. Let's not kid ourselves.
I mean, you lost South Carolina and Texas. That's it.
Listen. I mean, the top programs are tough. And women's basketball, there's not as many. But the top 8 or 9, 10 programs in college, women's college basketball, it's tough, and they can all beat each other. So it's not like LSU's got this straight shot to the Final Four. I do think they're an Elite 8 team, but they're gonna have to work to get into the Final Four.
Harold Perkins coming off a knee injury again. Julie Bodwin reported to this week that Blake Baker's going to use him at the star position. Your thoughts?
Okay. Star, as I know it, is more of a DB linebacker type role. There's got to be some creativity involved in that. You cannot
in terms of rushing the passer.
You cannot You cannot have him out in DB land or off
trying to cover tight ends.
Receiver. Right. Or if you're going to do a tight end, I can at least you can at least run with a tight end. You're not covering a slot receiver as a star. Does that mean in nickel packages he goes out and he becomes the fifth DB / hybrid? Excuse me. There's got to be some mixing and matching that goes along here. Maybe that's a first and second down type thing. I don't know, but he's got to get up the field. He has got to get up the field. We have got to stop overcomplicating this when it comes to Harold Perkins.
See ball,
get
ball.
After the quarterback. Let him find the ball. Let him get after the quarterback. Let him be the disruptor. And let the NFL figure out at the next level 100%. What he's going to do.
100%.
You're here to win games.
I agree.
And the Harold Perkins experiment has been one of the most frustrating things that I've seen watching LSU football, because you have a dynamic talent. Maybe your best overall offensive player, and he is getting wasted with these trial and error sort of things. Maybe they've got a different definition of the star and how they want to use him. I hope so. I think Blake Baker's a creative enough defensive coordinator to figure it out, but I don't want him covering slot receivers and DB and basically being a safety. He is a get after the passer type player.
Preaching the gospel there, my man. I'm 100% in agreement, no doubt. All right, let's talk Pelicans. Javonte Green has been bought out by the Pelicans. He's going to join the Cleveland Cavaliers. Pels are back in action on Friday night on the G, by the way. Pels are 13-42. They're tied with Utah and Charlotte, the second worst records in the NBA with 13 wins. They're behind Washington, who has 9 wins at the All-Star break. Okay. 27 games left in the season. I said this on the radio show yesterday. It's time for Tankathon. Look, I don't like watching losses. I don't like watching bad basketball. This team has played pretty well, okay, but not good enough to win. I'll take that for the last 27 games. This organization needs to find another superstar. Brandon Ingram is now in Toronto. You've got your superstar in Zion Williamson, who can't play more than 30 minutes a game. He can't stay healthy. You've got enough to build around a Murphy, a Murray, a Jones, a Messi, and Hawkins. You need a Cooper Flagg. You need another superstar on this team to build around. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look. David Griffin gave sort of his State of the Union address a couple weeks ago. I mean, he basically said it. This season's done.
Right.
So with that in mind, I can understand your point why you want to get in tank mode. I would like to see him get a look at some certain players. But to me, I go back and forth with the Zion situation because, if he plays too much, they got to pull him back. He plays. They don't want him to get injured, but inevitably he gets injured. So then there's an elongated return, and then there's the ramp up period, and there's the minute restriction. There's no back to back.
It's exhausting.
I'm for whatever gets the Pelicans out of the Zion era. I'm sorry, I got to be the one to say that.
Me too.
But it's. I mean, how many more years? How many more seasons can you be hamstrung or just in complete chaos or just not at your full strength because your star player is never fully available? And it sounds to me like Zion is willing to just let me play. But the Pelicans are now, he went too hard, so we got to pull him back. So you're in this weird catch-22 where you want him, but if he goes too hard, you got to pull him back. But if you pull him back, he's inevitably going to get injured, and there's going to be a recovery. It's just this never-ending cycle. It's just pull the plug on this thing. That's what I ultimately want to see when it comes to the Pelicans. I really don't care how the rest of the season ends. They're not going to make a run.
So you say trade him at the end of the season?
Absolutely. I think it's time to move on from this era.
I've said the same
because
thing.
You're constantly talking yourself into and out of, into and out of. It is time to just move on from the Zion era. And if you get that top 5 pick, if you get the number 1 overall pick, again, if you get lucky and you get Cooper Flagg, so be it. But I think David Griffin is a good enough executive and has a good enough understanding of personnel when it comes to the NBA and understands how to make deals to where you can still be a competitive team with more consistently available players, even if they don't have the top-end talent of a Zion Williamson, because that is just so frustrating to see your star player, how dominant he can be, but for 7 years, you never get the full picture.
I'm with you, and that's why, again, to me, I'm moving on with Murray and Messi and Hawkins, and we go right down the line of the guys I just spoke about.
Murphy,
he has to be. If he's on this team, he can't be your superstar. He's got to be your third guy.
It's time.
And again, you're paying a third guy $30 million a year, so it's very difficult. And I think, again, the fear factor on Zion is everybody's worried about in that organization is if we let him go and he becomes the star he's supposed to be, we're going to look horrible. He hasn't played for you for 7 years.
Who cares at this point?
He's dragged the whole franchise down for 7 years.
You've already lost that PR battle, bro. Just give it up. Just give it up. You've already lost that battle. So if that is indeed the fear,
oh my God,
that's
no
one
doubt
of the most
about
misguided fear you've ever seen. I think ride out this season. Wish everybody, and listen, of course that's going to happen. We know that. We know he's going to go somewhere else and Max he's going to be healthy. We understand that. But you know what? So what? Right. You can live in this sort of state of limbo for indefinitely, or you can just cut your losses and start fresh as an organization. I think it's time for that because Zion should no longer be the face of this organization.
Especially again now with Brandon Ingram moving on and the situation there. And of course, you tried to build around those two guys. Though you cannot, I've said it so many times on this program, the radio show. Sean, you and I have talked about it. You cannot have the two pillars of your franchise, your two superstars, often injured or unwilling to come back from injury.
You can't. And Brandon Ingram, I talk about waiting until 100%. He waits till he's 120% before he comes back from an injury.
And Toronto's finding out about it right now.
And then Zion, to me, I just, there's smarter people than me that understand physics and physiology, but I don't think his style of play warrants an 82-game season. I think he's always going to have that issue just because of his style of play, and he's just so brutal with the way he plays basketball. Just plays with such ferociousness and such force that it just always leads to his body being vulnerable. And as we've seen, it is a gauntlet to run an 82-game season with grown men in the NBA. So. I'm right there with you. And, of course, you kind of venture out to the unknown if you're the Pelicans. You don't have, an assurance of what you have or don't have. But what has the assurances gotten you? You've had one 49-win season where you've gotten to, one playoff sweep with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
And again, that year, you thought you were going to have Zion for the playoffs, and again, he gets injured, and everything just goes poof, it's gone. So, no, I'm with you. I've said it for a long time. I'm done with Zion. We need to move on again if you're the Pelicans. But again, I don't think they're going to do it.
Me either. I still think they're holding on hope.
They're going to keep hanging on like that girlfriend that I really love that girl. I got to keep holding. No. It's past time. But again, no matter what, get that first overall pick, or at least within the first two. Get yourself a quality player to go along with Murphy and Messi and Murray and build around those guys. And then Zion becomes lagniappe.
That's it. And if you're Zion, you kind of see the handwriting on the wall. If you're a lottery team, and you're going to draft another player at the top of the draft. I mean, I hope they don't get unlucky when it comes to the lottery. I hope they get lucky with the lottery.
Well, they've been lucky there with the lottery. They just haven't been able to capitalize on it.
And at that point, he would have to understand that would be a new era would be ushered in at that point. Hopefully, he would understand that. And part of me thinks Zion's ready for another chapter, the next chapter of his professional career, because he can't be happy with the way this turned. I have no doubt he wants to be a ball player. He wants to be the face of the franchise. It hasn't worked out.
Right.
Some of it his own, some of it with the Pelicans.
Right. No doubt. I mean, maturity's been a big part of that as well. No doubt about it. Sean, thanks for joining us here on the program.
Fun as always.
Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, with us here on the program this evening. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program. There's a QR code on your screen. They'll take you to the WLAE-TV YouTube channel and also to my website, ericasher.com, between WLAE-TV 2, between Pelican Sports Television, of course, WLAE. So many ways to catch our show. Remember, you can catch me on the radio 4 to 6 weekdays. That's 106.1 The Ticket, New Orleans' only 24-hour sports station. You can listen on our app, 106.1 The Ticket app. Also, iHeart Radio app, TuneIn Radio app, other ways to catch the program and the show. And of course, as always, I want to thank again the underwriters who make our show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters, we appreciate them. Please again support those underwriters. And then of course, the folks here at WLE who produce our program each and every week do a fantastic job. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, best director on the planet. That would be William Hill. I'm Eric Asher for Sean Fazende. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.